Well, we're live. Thanks for watching Numbskull News, and I'm here with Rock and Rant. Damn it! And as far as Big 12 Mafia, where else can we find you, Rock and Rant, other than Big 12 Mafia crap?
Yeah, you can obviously see me with Moen on Sundays, but I have a new channel called CFB Express without an E before the X that me and the guy Miami Flow started. We started a show like last year doing national college football on his Miami channel originally, but we really wanted to talk about everything national, from the Big 12 to ACC and dunk on all the people that want to dunk from everything. So you can catch me over there, CFB Express, and check us out. And I'm glad to be here with Numbskull, who always entertains the living hell out of me when it comes to college football. So,
Well, and like I say, go freaking join. If you don't, I've already subscribed to the Express, so if you haven't, jump on the shit.
thank
Also,
you,
Big
appreciate
12
it.
Mafia, I think they're pushing 5,000 subscribers.
Yeah, man,
So
CFB Mafia, Big 12 Mafia, one and the same. They're definitely about. They haven't hit 5,000. They probably will do tonight. I know Bomber's going on to talk about the crazy newest version of playoff models that people are throwing out as well.
yeah, so let's get them to 5,000. They're good people. They do good work. The last Friday show, that big freaking Friday show. I know wasn't you. It was a Gygax that was on there.
Correct. Yeah, I was watching. I watched part of it side saddle. I saw some of the results, and I know that you're definitely interested to talk about what those guys came up with.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great show. I mean, they throw down some really good stuff. Solid. See, I like it when people naturally don't agree with each other, unlike
Right.
some ESPN shows where you can tell it's all fake manufactured. It's people with real opinions, and they don't always agree, and it's good shit. And I'm over here yelling at my screen whenever someone disagrees with me, so that's what I like. So I'm getting all of it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I definitely want to go through some of the results that they had come up with. So let me see if I can't throw it up here. Now, obviously, they got okay. Here's the levels they have. Must have is must have. Underneath that, primary target, high value fallbacks, which is the third. Strategic ads. They sure were nice with how they labeled everything. I am not as nice. There's last resort.
No.
I probably would have put a 6-1 in. As this basically said never. Just they aren't coming to the Big 12 never. So this is how they kind of rank things for as far as ACC and some others coming to the Big 12, like realistic ads.
Right.
I don't know how realistic Miami is. That's more of a pipe dream to me. I think they're going to the Big 10, like no doubt. It's already in the books, if you ask me. So, what's your thought on Miami?
Yeah. Listen, full disclosure for those who don't know me, I'm a Miami fan. I went to school there. But I don't have. I try not to have too much of orange or green colored glasses. I can recognize everybody else's their value across the different conferences for whether it's Clemson, Florida State, good year, bad year. But I've always thought that Big Ten was the best fit for Miami if the ACC should continue down this road that they've been going down for a number of years for a number of reasons. Despite being so super south, a lot of the alumni are up in the Northeast and across the country. It just makes sense academically. It's there, and now it would even be more fun to go in there and dunk on Wisconsin for suing Miami for doing what they do as well, including getting a show cause for multiple coaches the day before they literally sued Miami. So I always thought that was the right one. And if it didn't go to that, if for whatever reason Miami was going to be not in the Big Ten, I don't really expect it to be the SEC for a number of historical reasons. I would be relatively surprised myself should that somehow come out of nowhere. I tend to think that if brands like Miami or Clemson, Florida State, whoever, are still left in the ACC when it's all said and done, that it's less about who's going into the Big 12, but who from the ACC and the Big 12 are coming together for something else potentially. But if that doesn't happen, look, the Big 12 is fun as hell to watch, and I don't think that it would be much better schedule than playing Wake Forest.
Yeah. See, to me, this is my speculation. I believe the Big Ten is going to act first. I don't know why. It just kind of makes sense. I think See, the SEC and ESPN, I think they're kind of content where they are. I think they could be
right?
okay where they are. They're not in any big hurry. However, to me, the Big Ten has three big media partners. They need premium matchups. They don't have enough. They just,
They don't have
that's
enough time slots and everything. You're right.
yeah. They want bigger matchups for all the time slots they have. Miami can help provide that. That's why, to me, I think Miami's the very next domino to fall to the Big Ten. I think it makes too much sense. There's just too much logic there. Now, I could be absolutely wrong, but that's what I think. I think that's the easiest move. That's the easiest move on the table.
Yeah, it makes a lot of great matchups, and that's what it's all about with all of these conference moves, right? You're trying to get as many great matchups, and ideally, depending upon the conference, have it align with academics as well, or culturally, or what the other sports might be, whether it be basketball or baseball or anything like that. The Big Ten would be dreadful for Miami on a baseball front, unfortunately, but would be really good on a lot of other sides. And look, I think if I was Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti, I would talk a little bit more, and when I talk a little bit better than he does to me. But I would make a bold move. Like, I would go after Miami, Clemson, Florida State, see what that does to the landscape as soon as possible. And maybe that does your ultimate goal and puts Notre Dame in a position where they feel like they need to do something that a lot of people don't. Like, I don't know if they ever would do that, Notre Dame being. But if North Carolina, whoever was going somewhere else, and I know how you feel about North Carolina, and I understand. But if I was Big Ten, I'd be aggressive, right? I would be aggressive and make that move and let people say, no to you. I know no one wants to be said no to publicly. Make Florida State, for all of the things that people give them grief about, make a decision, give them a chance to parlay it and hope it plays out and just let the things roll the way you're talking about. I don't know if they're going to do that though, but that's what I would do. I would agree with you in making a first move.
No, I firmly, it's from things that I read across the internet, some shows across that I respect across YouTube, that the Big Ten is going to be aggressive, or they are being aggressive now, especially their media partners, Fox, NBC, CBS. They like being connected to the Big Ten. They like that. All right, it's
Right, I'm
prestigious
sure.
and all that stuff. Get a lot of good ratings, but they just don't have quite enough. Now, if they can get Miami Notre Dame package, which I don't think Notre Dame's going to leave Independence, but theoretically, if they got that, they may just shut it all the hell down after that, because that's all they need. But
Yeah, I don't know if Notre Dame's going to do it either, but if you just played that out, the additional marquee matchups just from brand power, like forget about whether somebody's good one year or not. If you have Miami playing against Penn State or Ohio State, there's history with Michigan. There's history with Michigan State. USC and Miami have never played. Notre Dame has played all of those teams, right? But even if you go further down, Florida State has some history there as well. And I don't mean further down that I think one's ahead of the other, but just further down the list of ACC teams. There's a lot of good moves that add those marquee matchups that you're talking about for the Big Ten that I think would be really super interesting for sure.
yeah, that's why I understand why they included them, because we've heard nothing. It's been total crickets with the SEC in Miami, right? And I don't think anyone expects that at all. So they're
Well, yeah, the
really,
last time I heard anything about SEC was like 1991, man. Where there was like a 24, rumor is there was a 24 or 48 hour moment to go do it, and then that the rumor is that became what's ultimately was either South Carolina or Arkansas, depending upon which wives' tale you want to listen to.
that was a bad move in '91, apparently. So the SEC doesn't
Apparently.
always make the best moves. I think we can say this. But I will say that, but still, their one shot is the Big Ten in Miami. I think we can all pretty much, I think everyone's just kind of settled on that.
Yeah,
But
I
I
think,
think
I think
that's
that's
just
the
too
chalk, so to
likely.
speak.
Yeah, but I think that's just too likely. So I understand them having, like, if for whatever reason the Big Ten just gets stupid and decides no, or if they go with Florida State and Clemson, which that's hard for me to see, or Notre Dame and Clemson, or Notre Dame and Miami, and leave out, or sorry, Notre Dame and Florida State, or whatever mix they have. It's hard for me to see them not having Miami in whatever mix. because I only believe they're adding 2 more. They only want to get to 20, and I think they desperately want one of those 2 to be Notre Dame. But they may go to 19 and stop there until they can get Notre Dame, until Notre Dame finally decides, oh, okay.
Hmm.
But
yeah, I don't know if I buy that they only are going to go to 20. Like if you had to in the 2022-24 thing, I would be like 40% I'd put it on 20, 40% I'd put it on 24, and 20% I'd do that weird number of 22 because it just causes problems for scheduling, but you could work around that. Like I don't know if I'm as my opinion is as certain that they only want to go to 20 versus going to 24. I could see it happening either way, but I do think it's possible that they would stop at 20.
I think if you look at the numbers, like, all right, let's say they add in Miami. So I
Right?
think typically per year, you would get at least 4 good premium matchups out of that, maybe more. All right. So really, if you added 2, let's say you added Miami and Clemson, or Miami and Florida State, or Miami and Notre Dame. So that every year you're going to get at least 8 more premium matchups within the Big Ten. And then, like you said, even if it's not, Penn State versus Miami, or Michigan versus Notre Dame or whatever, still like a Notre Dame versus Purdue is going to get you a nice rating, versus
Yeah.
Nebraska, which hadn't done jack shit in 20 years, is still going to get you a huge rating. Washington will get you a huge rating. UCLA will get you a huge rating. So as far as just a tippy top premium matchups, 4 or 5, but you're going to add, basically you're going to make all your media partners happy, all 3 of them extremely happy. And I think really all you need is 2. That's why I don't understand why they would go more than that. Really, I think 2 is kind of where they're at. And
Yeah, I think ultimately it depends upon what the networks and the schools think are the future version. You did your whole thing about streamers, right? In a world where if they're not worried about exclusivity of windows, and more like the NFL doesn't really worry about exclusivity of windows, right? They have multiple games going on at the same time, and they're drawing giant audiences against on teams that are competing against each other in the same time slot. That sells, the red zone world and the Sunday ticket and all that other kind of stuff. So I guess it's possible that they're thinking that there's more windows, there's more times, they're expanding time slots, bumping lesser games to weirder time slots, on the West Coast. But in theory, if they're just looking for slots and you're trying to give your premier partners better games than those matchups in the current deal, then it makes sense, But what if there's a future where CBS has 2 or 3 games in the next contract, or they renegotiate the contract? Then you can make sort of different arguments for the Big Ten perspective. Same thing with the NBC side of it.
yeah, true. I just don't know how much, because in the article I read, I mean, there's only like so much money that ESPN, CBS, and NBC, Fox, that they have. And this is kind of where their streamers are going to come in, and they're going to get pretty good deals with all the rights, way past college football. But they're going to have a ton, early 2030s. This is going to be a feeding frenzy, and everyone's going to make more money. Live sports is going to make a lot more money, but you're going to have big streamers come in, and they'll have to spend a little more with some of the bigger brands. Like if they want more NFL on Amazon, they're going to have to pay huge money to get that.
Yeah, they're going to have to pay a suck tax, right? They're going to have to pay a suck. They're going to have to pay a suck tax for a minute because they don't have quite the same distribution reach as like people getting stuff for free over the air. So to get the same numbers, they're going to have to pay a premium to compensate the NFL for that inventory, or in this case, the Big Ten.
Yeah, or the SEC or the Big 12. I mean, everyone's going to go after the money,
For sure.
because that linear product is dying just at an accelerated rate every year. It's not something that's stable anymore, and there's only so much money in it in the going future. I mean, that's why ESPN's got a straight to consumer service that's starting up here in a couple weeks, I believe.
Right.
Something I've been talking about for a while. That's why Paramount and Peacock are going to join up, be the same thing. That's why Fox had to get a streaming service going, because Fox is going to die too. So
they're going to rebundle the debundled. That's the plan, right? we debundled everything, it cost you more. Now they're going to rebundle portions of it, and then eventually someone's going to say we should roll up all the streaming services into this thing with one price, and it's the
That's kind of
same net
what
effect.
ESPN wants to do. They want to be able to license it
Right.
to where they could show every single game, regardless of sport, on one spot, and then they just license it from Fox, or they license it from NBC or whomever, so they get their cut. Not sure how all that works, because I'm not a freaking expert on it, but if anyone could pull it off, it's probably them. And I've always kind of speculated that ESPN's going to buy them out anyway. I think they're going to buy ESPN. That makes too much sense.
That would be interesting for sure. And like, I think ultimately they have to think about what that model looks like, right? Because if they don't absorb more of these premium brands, and those premium brands go to like the Big 12, right? The brands that can draw the ratings that you're talking about, then there's going to be competition in their quote unquote time slots anyway. It's just going to come from somewhere else versus something you control. And that's why I think there could be still a possibility that they go, go bigger, go to 24. But we'll see what the market says for them.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell do I know? But that I mean, I'm just, that's my,
you know a lot. I mean, you read a lot. It doesn't. You're not making the deals, but you're not uninformed and not paying attention, right? So you have a reasonable opinion that some might not think is reasonable, but it is based on actually having paid enough attention to read all this stuff on a consistent basis and be familiar with it. There's a lot of people who get paid a lot of money have less information that they spew about. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate that, but
you could be Paul Feinbaum not realizing that actually the Big Ten did sort of invent football via Rutgers.
Yeah. Let's get to some of these other schools now. Duke, there was a big old fight about Duke between these folks. Some people wanted him in last resort, and I'm like, how are they going to last resort when all this talk is going on with them going to the SEC? Because the SEC now wants basketball, and I don't know. I guess I didn't get that with a lot of the speculation that's been running around. To me, Duke is a must-have, and really Duke and UNC together would be that would be awesome in the Big 12. And I don't care that they don't want to be here. Hell, Utah doesn't want to be here. Arizona State doesn't want to be here.
You guys all love Utah so much.
Well, I mean that's kind of the way it is. They didn't want to be here. But sometimes you don't always get what you want, you get what you need. A famous American poet once said that. So and all this talk about they ain't gonna go. Well, sometimes you ain't got a damn choice, because the SEC is not taking Duke. The viewership sucks. It just sucks. But there was last year, it sucked. The year before that, they actually averaged over 1 million viewers per week. So they have these spikes, these weird spikes sometimes. And mostly because they get banished to the ACC network all the time. So they don't record their viewership.
Right. And self-fulfilling prophecy happens to their ratings a decent amount.
Yeah. So Duke football really doesn't get out there. It doesn't get seen by a lot of people. It doesn't get seen nationally. Unlike a lot of Big 12 schools, they do. Because it's not just ESPN, it's Fox, it's WBD. It's ESPN Plus as well, but that's still a national outlet. So the visibility of the Big 12 is just much higher. And if you want to split that basketball off, to me, Duke is just a no-brainer ad. If we're, especially people talking UConn, Duke, come on. I mean, I don't know. That to me, it's a perfect ad.
Yeah, I'm not sure why people. I understand why perceptionally they think that way because of Duke's football history. Even though if you actually look at it for a while, it has some pretty good moments in time. There has been some consistency, and then there's been a little bit of a downturn. They've had blips under Spurrier and the previous coach. Now you got Manny here. You got Mensa coming from Tulane into Duke. If he puts up numbers this year, then you have 2 back-to-back years under a new coach. It could add a lot more visibility and perception to what the program is. But I think the thing that people lose is that, look, if the average deal is being said to say like 75% is for football and 25% is for basketball, well, Duke, average blended rate, they're going to way over-index they're not a 20, their value isn't 25% basketball. Their value might be 50% basketball as conferences are looking at them versus football, because they're playing however many conference games against you, against the conference teams that they could bring in. Just how they're raising the ratings on what is effectively 25%, but by a massive factor. So you have to look at them blended, and not necessarily where Duke football was 3 years ago. So I understand people don't want to look at them as a primary target, but to put them at last resort isn't really, to me, looking at a full picture of what Duke can bring to the just the media portion of the overall TV contract, especially if a Yormark decides to split them off into two different deals down the road, right? Which has been discussed or rumored at least.
Yeah, and I mean, this is why he looked at UConn. This is why he looked at Gonzaga. He knows he needs those basketball brands. I mean, we got great brands in the Big 12, but if you really want to split it off for top dollar, and everybody at the top of the media structure here, they all believe basketball is going to grow by leaps and bounds in the next 10 years. So
Right.
you should be able to split off that value and get paid on that separately instead of just bundling it with all the non-revenue sports. And if in that case, you really need to add top brands into that. And we're talking blue blood brands here, and other Kansases here. Duke qualifies. To me, UConn qualifies as well. But
Right.
to Duke, I would put them in the must-have category. I wouldn't put them in front of Louisville or not even in front of NC State. But personally, Miami, I just don't take seriously. If it happens, holy crap, I'm not planning on that at all. And it's an absolute yes. But I would just kind of take them off the list as a pipe dream and go with more realistic ads to me. And Duke is more realistic than Miami.
Yeah, you get Duke and Kansas in basketball as well as Kansas has done a lot with their program. I mean, I think props to them both for getting a $300 million donation, way to go, but also what they were doing to the stadium already. A basketball rival could naturally move over into becoming a football rival over time. And look, every conference needs a few schools that everybody universally hates. So apparently a lot of the Big 12, because of how maybe they perceive Utah has acted or actually has acted, has annoyed people. Well, wait till you meet the arrogance of the Duke alums. Should they come into the Big 12, you guys will have the Duke Utah game and trying to figure out who you don't want the field to implode on.
Well, I'll tell you that because the 16 team Big 12. I mean, we've only had one season, but because the villains have always been Texas and Oklahoma, and they're gone. They've always been the big bullies. They've always been the villains. Of course, Utah is making themselves a villain. That's great. You got to have the heels. If you want to have a wrestling company, you need great heels. Utah is a great heel. Kansas, if they can keep this up, being good at football, that's another heel. They're going to start. I'm telling you right now, in the Big 12, they're going to start catching hate because Kansas State's lovable. Iowa State, they're lovable. They're over there in the corn. They aren't hurting nobody. They got good defense. No one really hates TCU. Give it time, but Kansas is going to be the next one. Now, Colorado with Prime, he's very polarizing. But over time, Kansas is going to fill that role of Texas. I'm not saying they'll have the success, but they're going to have some of that hate just because they're the top brand one of the top brands in the whole damn conference.
Right,
just ask them. Just ask a Jayhawk. Okay.
Does Texas Tech take on any villain role, or are they like a defender of the faith role right now because they're spending money and dunking on the SEC? Or is it right now people are happy because somebody's competing in that area, but eventually jealousy hits? What do you think happens there to maybe add a fourth villain out of the 16 or so?
Yeah. They're in there in the shadows, spending their money. Everyone's kind of interested in seeing what they're going to do. There's no threat right now. But you let them win a couple of times, let them win the Big 12 a couple of times. And that will be a very annoying fan base. People will get just seeing tortillas all over Texas highways. It's going to get old real fast. Yeah, that's another one. That's a good call. That's another one that can really just start pissing people off. Look, no one hates Baylor. You got Joanna Gaines or whatever his name, Kip, whatever his name is, down there doing all their arts and crafts. So no one's going to hate them. Houston, they're too small to hate. Arizona State, I don't know. The fan base isn't annoying. It's not very big either. It's not very
right.
big.
It's disproportionate to their enrollment. I understand. At least, they're not as loud despite their enrollment. I understand.
I'm saying the people on the precipice of being hated. Kansas, and I think you're right, Texas Tech is just under the surface. They're bubbling. If they get success, boy, that could be some annoying bastards out there in Lubbock. I don't think I've ever told you before, but my mom used to be a truck driver, and she had a famous saying in our family. She always had a famous saying about Lubbock. She said the birds always flew upside down over Lubbock because there's nothing worth shitting on.
Oh, jeez.
Just putting that out. That was from my mom.
I can't comment well. I used to have to, in a past job, I used to have to go to Amarillo all the time because there was a Walmart associated company there that I had to deal with. So I could talk a lot about Amarillo and Austin and Dallas because I was there a lot. But at Lubbock, I only got, delayed into for weather twice, and I never got off the plane. So I got nothing to say about Lubbock.
Yeah, that was me with Utah. I went into Salt Lake City one time, and I'm a smoker, and I was flying standby, so I got stuck. I'm like, damn, I'm trying to get to San Francisco. I got stuck, and we're there. Like, oh, it's going to be 6 hours. I'm like, oh. Turns out they have a smoking section. They were the only airport in the nation with a freaking smoking section. I was like, yes, saved. I've been saved by the Mormons. Thank God. Yeah, so I think we're both kind of agreement with Duke. They ended off with primary targets. I think I'm good with that. I'm more of a must-have kind of guy, but I think they're important. I think they're important to get for the Big 12. Now Rye Guy, he said I might move Oregon State to last resort. They had a strategic ad. They have Washington State at last resort. I kind of see them. I don't see a lot of difference between the two. And for me, I see them as last resort. I just don't think that's going to happen. If there was if we had that sixth option of never going to happen, it's Washington State and Oregon State and probably Tulane as well. So what's your thoughts on them?
I don't know. I guess for some reason, I still have the aura of Washington State and Oregon State as both rivals in the Pac-12 in a different space than others, but I get the reality of what has happened to the conference. One program has also tried a lot harder to stick. One has just done a really good job of waving the flag at College game day, essentially, right? To keep things going. I think it's sad that they are possibly going to like not only last resort, but below last resort kind of zone in a lot of people's minds. But I have a hard time arguing that they should be ahead of multiple other teams that are on the lines ahead of them. It depends ultimately to me, like when you talk about Tulane, what happens when their coach leaves, which is probably going to happen after this upcoming season. Does the program maintain always being a possible G5 school? So if you're trying to have a good team added to the to football and is performing well, then it maybe lifts them up. But you're not necessarily getting it just because, as much as I love New Orleans, market-wise, it's not a big TV draw. I don't necessarily see them as last resort. I could think of them more as a strategic ad based on an assumption that they continue to be good at football. They're not particularly great at basketball, relatively. But I can understand the dropping for Oregon State and Washington State. I guess I just kind of feel for those fans because it's one thing when you haven't ascended. It's another one to like have been in one of the premieres and keep taking drops down due to circumstances. But sometimes that's like a reflection on your leadership too.
Yeah. I don't have anything against Tulane, but I just don't. The market of New Orleans, really, I think it gets more clout than probably it deserves. I don't think they ever fully recovered from Katrina.
Right, for sure.
I know a lot of people moved to Texas from the New Orleans area, Houston, Dallas, Austin, Fort Worth. We had a big, just surge of people, no pun intended, but a big surge of people after Katrina from New Orleans. And a lot of those folks never went back. Um, so I don't really value that much. I know they're great. They're a great institution. Uh, they play some good football. They really do, and their fans give a damn. They show up to the games, but I just, I think that's the realities of it. I think you look at Memphis trying to buy their way in. They're being told no. I think that's going to be the same throughout every. Duke is not going to be able to buy their way into the Big Ten or the SEC either. I mean, because the way we see Memphis is kind of the way the SEC and the Big Ten see Duke. It's on a parallel track. Now for the Big 12, Duke's closer to what we are, way closer. But that's why I think they're a tier 2 football program and we're a tier 2 conference. And with that blue blood status at basketball, I think it adds something. Oregon State and Washington State, we feel bad for them because they used to be power schools, but
not enough to invite them to your party.
Yeah, but in this, where we are, it's not about it's show business. It's not about show friends. The great Jerry Maguire, or the little bastard that was talking to Jerry Maguire. So yeah, I think we feel that way. Now Pitt, let's talk Pitt for a minute. They have them as a strategic ad, and I absolutely agree with them. I think that's been overhyped because we all want to look. We all love West Virginia. We want them to have their rivalry, their travel partner.
Right.
They went through hell being in the Big 12, traveling everywhere. Again, just ask a Mountaineer fan; they'll tell you how much it sucked. And Pitt, we would love to give them Pitt, but I'm like, we can give you better than Pitt, even though that's your main rival. But to me, Virginia Tech is another great rivalry. They don't have the backyard brawl moniker, but I would much rather have Virginia Tech over Pitt, even though the ratings for Virginia Tech have been down and bad. But at one time, they were up at one of those teams at the top of the mountain. And I just, the way I see it, like with Frank Beamer, you were there once. You had a great run with Beamer. You can have if you got there once, you can get there again. Colorado was there in the 90s. They went down horrifically, and they're back up again. It depends on who you hire, your recruiting, and how much money you can shove into that thing. I just believe in Virginia Tech more than Pitt.
Yeah, can you imagine if 10 years ago, let's just say it's 10 years ago, the realignment world is churning like it is now, and we were doing this same thing, there's no chance of Virginia Tech wouldn't have been on the must-have list, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's no chance. And you're right, that for those who doubt it, like, he's not hating on Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's TV ratings I would have thought that Virginia Tech, for having a bunch of mediocre years, that their floor on the TV ratings would have been higher than it has turned out to be. And I say that coming from as a fan of a school that essentially for 20 years has averaged a 7-5 season, right? Being Miami. But throughout that, the floor for Miami, even the worst years, has been essentially at least, north of 1 million viewers. And the minute we're winning, it's cranking up again, and you'll see like the ratings of Notre Dame and the Florida game this year, right? And if we suck, then there's still hate watching. It's like Colorado, right? Like there's no neutral opinions on Miami. You could either watch them because you love them or you watch them because you hate them. As long as they're relevant. And even when we're not relevant, it's still more relevant than a lot of other programs, including those in the bottom part of the Big Ten and the SEC. Virginia Tech, I thought, was that too, right? Like on its own level. Can you imagine also if they had, when they had a chance to, spent money and got Shane Beamer instead of letting him eventually wind up in South Carolina and what he's doing with that program? About like leadership, mistakes, bad decisions, hiring the wrong person at the right time, not being willing to spend at the right time. I don't know that they could have got him. I might be making up a fiction. But Virginia Tech, I think, is more important overall than Pitt. Georgia Tech, I know, is definitely more important. I might be able to make an argument looking at this list about Syracuse versus Pitt, one way or the other, primarily probably because of West Virginia and the proximity to a few other schools, relatively. But I don't disagree with you overall about, where Pitt sits relative to Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech at all.
Yeah, and again, it's nothing against Pitt. You are what you are. It's like Oregon State, Washington State, Tulane. I'm not saying Pitt's below them. They're above them.
No.
But
Virginia Tech, Pitt has messed up a few Miami seasons and could do it again at the end of this year at the last game of the season in the cold. So that's not. We're talking about the business side of it, not whether or
Right.
not like your school is a worthy institution. I'm not here dunking on Pitt. If it was Wisconsin, I'd be dunking on you with every fiber of my being. If it was the Gators, I'd be dunking on you. But like, I'm not going to dunk on Florida State, even though they're a rival, because I at least have respect for them until they troll. Then I dunk. But
Right.
it is what it is. Like that's just a business decision for Pitt. It's just the state of the world, and like making West Virginia happier. You can just make that solvable by making sure those two teams schedule each other out of conference every single year, right?
Yeah, and I think they got like a 3-year hiatus in the backyard brawl, which
Mm-hmm.
unlike other people get pissed off about. Like they're pissed off about Farmageddon because there's like was it 2027 I think it is that they're not going to have the back or the Farmageddon. It's one of those years. They're it's like
Yeah,
not going
there's
to
a one
happen.
year where it's not set.
Right. There's one. Well, there's 1 year it's not scheduled at all. Yeah. And to me, it's like, look, we're. I don't mind going a year or even a couple of years without a big time rivalry, as long as you know you're getting it back. So, like Farmageddon, Farmageddon's coming back. So to me, it's like the absence makes the heart grow fonder. Let's make Farmageddon a bigger deal. It's playing it in Ireland this year. There's going to be a year where you don't have it, so it's going to be even more hyped up the next year. So it's not necessarily bad, but 3 years without Pitt, West Virginia is kind of sucks. It's like let's fix that.
Yeah. I mean, I get though, like I haven't lived in my lifetime where Miami and Florida State didn't play. I would lose my mind not having that game in 1 year. I know how much I hate the fact that Florida chickened out and canceled that series way back when, and now it comes back every 5 to 8 years for a back and forth game. So I understand. Like I would, you could say from a business perspective, if you're getting Kansas State and Iowa State kicking off the season in Farmageddon this year, putting that rivalry to so that everyone knows what Farmageddon is. If you haven't figured it out, like everyone will have understood that. To have it like not be on the schedule in 2 years, I don't think is the smartest business decision. If that game like blows up and becomes more national than it might be already. So from a business perspective as well as a fan experience, I get why people are upset about it. But I know your school has had more moments where like your big rivals have been ripped out from you for various reasons for more than 1 year or are doing so ongoing too.
Yeah. I think look, if that Ireland game draws a huge rating and then next year's game draws, even if it's not in Ireland, still draws another big rating and like there's real demand for it, then it's probably not going to go away for that 1 year.
Yeah, schedule it out of conference. Like even if
It's
I'm
got to be
surprised the
bigger than
Big
just
12.
two fan bases. It's got to
Yeah,
be.
I'm
It's got to be
surprised.
bigger.
I mean, aren't I don't know the details of what protected rivalries the Big 12 does or doesn't have with the nobody has the right amount of teams anymore kind of thing. I'm surprised that one wasn't one, if there is one. Like there are a couple within the ACC that are protected. I don't know the current stance, so I don't want to speak out of turn about like what the Big 12 is or isn't doing to make sure that BYU and Utah play every single year, K-State and Iowa State. I'm not 100% sure. So
I want to say there's 3 in the Big 12. So it's the Holy War. It's Kansas State, Kansas, which I get that, and I think that they did this just to be nice, but I think it's Arizona State and Arizona. I think
right.
they were coming in, so they protected that for a few years.
They kept the in-state rivals, and maybe they didn't think of like TCU, Houston, Tech. I don't. Why wouldn't Houston? I
Yeah,
know is a newer
TCU
member.
and Baylor. TCU and Baylor is a huge rivalry, and
Right.
there's some history there. Like 2011, I believe it was 2012, something like that, when it was like TCU, Baylor, and Tech all vying for the conference title at that time. So that became a big time deal. But no, yeah, none of that's protected. And as a TCU fan, I'm fine with that. But I Farmageddon, they're doing everything they can to pump it up. So if you want to save it, they're doing what they can to save it. There just has
Yeah,
to be
for sure.
national interest in it for it to be a thing. And Pitt in West Virginia does have some national interest, so I get it.
Absolutely.
Now, Georgia Tech is an interesting one to me. Georgia Tech, as far as the Big 12 getting them, I'm not overly. I don't put a lot of emphasis on market when I look at realignment, but Atlanta is massive. It's a huge market. It's just behind Houston and DFW, really, and it's still ever growing. It's a monster. Um, and their ratings right now, the last 3 years, they're number 4 in the ratings in the ACC. They got the 4th best ratings in the last 3 years. That's not a fluke.
Yeah,
It's trending up. So this is a
for sure.
growing institution, a growing program, growing in importance. They're getting better. They're they're not winning on the highest levels, but you could tell they're getting there. They're getting a culture there. I really like Georgia Tech. I've liked them more and more every year. As far as a high value fallback, to me, they're a primary target. That's kind of
I'm
where.
same page with you. I would absolutely have Georgia Tech as a primary target, bordering on must have. And the reason why is I believe that that program itself is investing right now. Like the Georgia Tech football program we're seeing is becoming more and more similar to this program that was in the early 90s that split the national title way back when with Colorado, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, or right around that era. I can't remember exactly. I think they have a great coach. I think he's probably sticking there for a long term. But even if he gets, poached by a higher program in the SEC in terms of brand perception or dollars, they're making really good hires. They're spending money. And yes, I don't think the market is everything, but it's also not nothing. And I know people like to disparage. Well, Georgia Tech is only whatever. I hear third, and maybe backed by numbers, third in Atlanta, right? Because you got Georgia for sure, Clemson's super close. That goes over. You got a lot of people from a lot of places living in Atlanta. But being third in the 7th largest DMA still means you're a bigger TV market percentage wise that you own than the vast majority of the Big 12 markets. That's just a numbers thing. And if they continue to do that and maybe get their basketball going a little bit more, I think there's a lot of things about them, ratings wise and market wise and academics. It is still universities that add to the Big 12 in a way, extending the footprint over, getting more into the Eastern time zone, more slots, right? I think it's a very valuable brand. So I agree with you. It's at least a primary target to me, and it's right on that line of I can make a good argument for them to be a must-have goal if you can get them, if they don't go to the Big Ten. And I don't think they're going to the SEC, but I do think they're a possibility of a Big Ten in a 20-team scenario and a 24-team scenario, just depending upon what happens with what the SEC does and doesn't do, what Notre Dame does or does not want to do.
Yeah, like this current form of realignment, you pretty much see the Big Ten and the SEC and their media partners. Everyone tends to forget about it's not just those conferences making expansion decisions. The media partners also are in that conversation, like 50% of
Right.
it. So
For sure.
without the media partners, it doesn't happen. So
Right.
they're not going to add teams based on potential. Georgia Tech's a potential ad. They're not fully formed yet. There's a lot of positive attributes they're showing right now. They're showing growth. That's a perfect ad for the Big 12 because we do add for potential because we don't make $100 million a year payouts. There's not that much money going out from the media partners per school. So they can still afford to add potential ads. That's what UCF was. That was what Cincinnati, Houston, hell, Arizona State and Arizona. Those are potential ads, right? They have potential, and Georgia Tech has that. And, that's why I value Virginia Tech so much as well, because they once were there that you could see them getting back there. Once you've done it, you could do it again. Georgia
Right.
Tech, like I said, they've been growing to me. My interest on them, because before I would kind of dismiss them. I kind of put them with Wake Forest and Boston College until I really started paying attention. And I'm like, whoa, this team here, they're rising through the ranks quickly. And it's not like, oh, a blip. No, it's a steady
Right.
rise over years.
Plus, they were boring to watch for a while. Like they had a very effective offense, but it was not like modern offense, right? It was, lull you to sleep and very old school, like 1970s, 1980s. That is not the team anymore. They can run it, they can pass it. and I haven't done this homework, but the thing when it comes, yes, cable is going down, but linear TV still has a value. You can see the difference in a game on ESPN versus on ABC, right? And part of that is because it's easier to get, you don't have to have giant antennas anymore to get the free digital feed for your station in your local market. And depending upon what network it is, like Fox and ABC, CBS, NBC, they all, of course, have local affiliates in every big station, in every big city. But sometimes they actually own the station too, right? So depending upon which deal it is with who, there's another level of the value of not only are they delivering good content to an affiliate in a market, if one of them happens to, or more than one of them happen to have a local station they actually own, not just as an affiliate, there's another multiplier they can have that spreads through other programming they do, their news coverage. To whatever degree that stuff is all diminishing, and it's it may be diminishing in terms of through the cable feed to the on air, but if you pay attention to the local channels, most of those news and sports operations are feeding their crap into YouTube all day, just like a creator now. Only the silliest, dumbest ones are not. So there could be even more value for Georgia Tech, my long-winded way of getting there, depending upon the network that is associated with the conference that they go into in this or future deals, depending upon if they own a station there.
Yeah, like I said, I like everything you were saying, everything I'm saying. I think they're a great ad. Daniel Gygax, he was one of them that he was on that show. Did not think much of Duke. Less than 24,000 home attendance in the past 5 years. They stink the end. It's all about football in the Big 12. Well, that's where I also disagree with Daniel. Football is the most important thing, but especially with the Big 12, it's also about basketball because this is a great basketball conference. I would say that's what we do the best. And
yeah,
so as far as where your mark is and all of that, the right basketball ad. The problem with UConn is that it's essentially it's an independent. It's worse than Duke because especially with the independents. So that's been the problem. Although I'm very big on UConn. I'm still big on UConn. Now I can't put them below a high value fallback, or can't put them above that. But I think I would put UConn there. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure to give Daniel some love. I understand what he's saying about that attendance, but it's a TV product, soon to be a streaming product. So
right.
Even though the attendance may suck, it's about how many eyeballs can you draw with your program. And their main value to the Big 12 is basketball.
Yeah, and if if Duke continues to win, their numbers will go up relatively, right? I think it's completely possible that look, they're not going to build a 75,000 seat campus stadium for Duke football, but that's not necessarily going to change whether or not they could draw better and on games and be a factor. And I think it's probably more likely than not that they're gonna if the Big 12 feels they are losing value on what their negotiations can be by keeping all of their conference sports bundled together in one TV deal, mainly built around football and basketball, then Brett Yormark is going to unlock it, and all of a sudden you're going to be really thankful that you had a Duke in the quote-unquote 25% portion that suddenly becomes 35% of your revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's and they said there's no is it great athletics-wise? It is. And again, it's because of the potential of college basketball overall, nationally, where that's rising. If you have Duke on your roster, my God, like you said, that just it makes everything you're doing more valuable. It makes your entire basketball product of the Big 12 more valuable. That's why they're a great ad. It's for the future. It's not for right now. It's for the future.
Yeah, it would help Duke if they, if Manny Diaz wasn't a sugar rush on the departure of Elko to Texas A&M and kept the pro. He did a great job. Like, I'm not the biggest Manny Diaz fan. I'm more or less of a former Miami AD fan for hiring him the way he did. I liked Manning just fine when he was defensive coordinator. I didn't really like that hire, but he did a great job as a defensive coordinator at Penn State, and he kept that program at Duke going great post Elko. I think is a very good coach. So if he can continue to do that, they did attract one of the top tier quarterbacks in the portal. If they continue that, then like in a year or two, perception wise might be different. Like Georgia Tech's perception is because a couple of years of really building under a new coach, right? And thanks for calling out. It was a triple option they used to run, which is really interesting to watch on reels. It wasn't interesting to watch all the time, though. Again, Georgia Tech was also like a kryptonite for Miami, so shout out to them for running it. It's hard to plan for, so it was a smart play. It was just boring to watch it. But if they have a few back-to-back seasons and have some exciting brands of football, plus, and the ACC schedule falls the right way, so they get good teams on their schedule versus one of those like easy years, which are also terrible for selling tickets for if you're not already sold out. You might have a different view of them by the time the realignment moves happen or new deals are being cut up. And but I get where Bomber and Daniel were coming from on it as well. I just think I think basketball is going to be more important. I think it's pretty possible the Big 12 will split it into two different deals because I think there's more value there to the conference and you need all the dollars you can get.
Yeah, like I agree with Daniel Gygax as far as it's all about football with the Big Ten and the SEC, which is strange to say, especially with the Big Ten and how they feel about education. But it really with them too, the prices are going to go. It's just so insane, especially on their next TV contracts. Because when you're looking at ads on the next, as realignment continues into the early 2030s, it's not about what they're making right now. It's what they're going to be making in the early 2030s on their next media deals, which is going to be even more. And that's why Duke is not worth that. They don't have that value at the SEC and Big Ten level for those media companies, but they do have that value in the Big 12 for the Big 12 price, to ESPN, to Fox, WBD, and whatever streamers get heavily involved. So that's why I'm kind of high on them. But this one's kind of funny. Rye Guy, where does Utah get their arrogance? That's a great question. That's it. Because yes, they won, back-to-back Pac-12 championships. They were kind of went back to mediocrity in the Pac-12's last year, but because they played in the Rose Bowl both years and they both times got their ass whooped by Big Ten teams. Did they not, Rock and Rant? From what I remember,
yeah. I mean, look, I think it's going backwards in time. They've had a consistent football program, right? Back to Urban Meyer and the peaks that they had around there. Like, I don't like Urban Meyer, but I can't deny that he wasn't an excellent coach and did a lot to get the program going. And I think part of it is probably, and I'm not an expert. I have been to Utah a few times, but I never been to a Utah game, and I know everything I know from Utah by like being part of being welcomed into the CFB Mafia crew and knowing Wild Ute and watching him and Bomber fight on the Holy War, which I didn't know existed until 2 years ago. But I think also when you've been, I guess in their mind, they ascended to the Pac-12 and then it kind of fell back. But you don't really see that arrogance coming, from Arizona State or ASU. Maybe because they were always in the Pac-12. Maybe they felt like, maybe Utah felt like they got higher and then they got brought back down, so it's beneath them. I don't know if that's where it comes from. I like that they're a little saucy though. It's better to be loved and hated than like for people to just be like meh about you.
True. Very true, and that's kind of where Arizona is right now. They're kind of the meh until they start doing something in football.
Right.
Basketball, different story. Very
totally different story. The Wildcats are like have always been in my lifetime that I can remember important in basketball on the West Coast.
Yeah. But yeah, where does their arrogance come from? To me, it came from being in the Pac-12. There was just a stink of I can't think of the word, but it is arrogance. It's I can't think of it, but
there's a little bit of elitism, right?
Yes, there you go. That's the word I'm looking for. Gosh damn elite, that California elitism. Boy, it's a cancer. And, we're trying to get them a little radiation treatment here in the Big 12. 5 and 7 was the first dose. They can very well get a 6 and 6 treatment this year. And then hopefully after that, they'll be good up and around. The hair will be coming back in, and everything will be good. So
yeah, I don't think that's going to happen for you this year, though, with Utah. I think they're going to be in the top 4 of the conference when it's all said and done. I didn't think that earlier this year, but my guess is that they're going to be in the upper third of the upper quarter of the conference. We'll see what happens, though.
Yeah,
Whittingham's a good coach. I just
Yeah.
think he's not going to have his second year like that.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, the quarterback looks good, but there's a lot of damn good quarterbacks in this league. So
It may or may not have anything to do that my auto draft had 2 Utah people in my college football draft show up on my team. I might not have ulterior motives now.
Gotcha. All right. Is Texas Tech now considered a villain because of Cody Campbell? Maybe to the SEC. Maybe to Georgia fans. Maybe to Georgia fans. I think right now, Texas Tech and Cody Campbell has the rest of the Big 12 smiling, just laughing.
Yeah.
The
enemy of my enemy is my friend zone for me.
There you go.
Cody Campbell.
That's basically it. Now, if they win the Big 12 a couple of times, trust me, you will never stop hearing from Tech fans, and then they're the enemy. But for right now, they're like you said, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's very, very well said. Let's see, anything else? Damn, there's actually more comments than I thought. Look there, Gygax came around. I'm glad you agree with us. I'm glad you agree with us. A little wink for you. Anyway, man, I got to get out of here. But, dude, I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, I appreciate the invite. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Oh, yeah. And please tell them your new channel on YouTube and where they can find you.
Yeah, definitely. If you could want to check it out at CFB as in boy. So College Football Express without an E before it. It's like we call it's the train, so that there's a car for every topic and every team because we talk about literally everything. And I appreciate if you give it a watch. And if you haven't subscribed to my boy Numbskull News here and you just came across us because of the algorithm, he's definitely not going to bore you. So make sure you like this show and subscribe to him as well.
All right, man. Hey, thanks everyone for showing up. Thank you for your comments. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them, but if I don't feed my old lady, I'm in trouble. That's just the way it is. And she does a little bit more for me. That's all I'm saying. I'll leave it right there. Anyway.
You're a wise man, wiser than I even knew.
All right, y'all. Peace out. Hey, I appreciate you being here, man.
You're welcome.